I'm Megan. Thank you for joining me today. I've put together a practice that's specific for the sacrum, as I've been having my reoccurring grumpy sacrum. But this practice will be a combination of some movement and some stillness to gently release that area. So the first thing we want to know is identify where that space is in our body. So whatever position you're in, just take your hands, and oftentimes we go and we rub our own low back, but you'll feel your lumbar spine where your curve is and go just below that curve. And that's where we'll find our sacrum. And it's a triangular shaped bone that faces downward. So just start to rub in that area. You'll feel your buttocks, cheeks, and you can go to either side. Just get familiar with that triangle. So you have your lumbar spine above it and your coccyx, your tailbone below it. And just familiarize where that is in your body. Think of that as a bony landmark. And then once you've found it with your hands, we'll go ahead and come down onto our back. And let the ground find that same bone. So you can just let the weight of your body fall into the ground. Best to have your knees bent with feet on the floor. In fact, if you want to release the sacrum a little bit more, widen your feet and let your knees, your inner knees, fall together. Just notice what that feels like. Can you sense how the lumbar curve is maybe slightly lifted away from the ground? And then where you feel a little bit more compression or pressure into the ground, that's your sacrum. And if you take your hands to your abdomen, begin to breathe into the belly. Breathe into the low abdomen. And image or experience the breath coming in, creating space not only in the abdomen, but you might feel like it's going in towards the back of the sacrum, expanding on the breath in, and then as you breathe out, just allow the sacrum to release a little bit deeper into the ground underneath you. And as we land and locate in the sacrum with the support of the earth, see if you can tell, does it feel like your sacrum is higher or lower on one side or the other? Perhaps you'll feel more weight resting in one side of the hip or the other, the left or the right. So do you feel perfectly balanced in that area, or is there any weight difference or length difference? Does it feel cold or hot? Anything you can tell yourself about that area. So the sacrum is referred to as the sacred sacrum because the word sacrum actually translates to sacred. As we take ourselves through this practice, remember that physically the sacrum has a big role to play. It takes all of the weight from our entire spinal column and then transfers it into the two sides of the pelvis. And then, of course, down through the legs and into the earth. So we want to honor this strong bone of support. It also protects the organs, particularly the organs of reproduction, from the backside, just like our rib cage protects some of our organs. And when we're first born, it's actually 5 separate vertebrae. And somewhere in our late teens, those 5 vertebrae fuse to create this triangular, what seems like one bone. Just taking your last few breaths in and out of the abdomen. Think of filling the whole pelvic bowl as you breathe in, including the space where the sacrum attaches to the pelvic bones, and releasing the weight of the pelvis as you breathe out. And we're going to get started with our practice on the left side of our body. So I like to use a blanket underneath the head, so you may want a blanket. You also may want a pillow or something underneath your knee. So the blanket will go under my head, and I'm going to make sure I have blanket behind me. I'm going to draw the knees up, and then you're going to take the top right knee and let that come over the left knee. And if it won't comfortably come to the floor, So inner right knee to the floor, put something underneath it. So what you should feel like is the right hip is coming a little bit more towards your head and your left hip is further. So if we think of it from the standpoint of a sacrum, the sacrum is right now in a bit of a rotation or a lift. The right side of the sacrum is lifted up towards the shoulder and the left side is lower. And just let yourself rest into that position for a moment, see if it's comfortable for you. And then we're going to begin to move. You're going to take your right hand and place it on your rib cage or your belly. Let the right arm stay relaxed. Take a breath in. You can even continue to breathe into the belly. And as you breathe in, start to roll towards the right side of the mat. So roll your right shoulder blade and elbow to the right. And then as you breathe out, roll back. So very slight, inhaling and rolling towards the right, and exhaling and coming back. So you should feel a little bit of stretch right in that sacral region, particularly on the right side. If it's too much, don't go as far, go slowly. If you find your knee, that right knee is lifting way off the ground, that may be a sign to put something underneath it. You also get a nice stretch through your shoulders doing this. And as you start to open up more and your body feels safe, roll a little further, maybe even working towards taking the right elbow down to the ground. You can slide that right hand away from you, let your head turn. So an easy rotation. But imagine this rotation, this spiral pattern is starting from the sacrum, then going up through the low spine, the lumbar spine, then the center of the spine, the thoracic area. Feel your rib cages, your rib cage as it rotates, and then all the way into the shoulders. And we come back, we release that rotation. So gently rotating the spine from its base at the sacrum and all the way up even through the neck, letting the head roll. Take one or two more. Nice, gentle, slow rotations. And then we're going to hold this last one. So once again, if you find your knees lifting or if it's just more comfortable, put something underneath. The other reason you may want a block or a pillow or something is if your right elbow is not touching the ground, then put something underneath it. So if I turn the other way to let you see, if my right arm is up here, there's going to be pulling on the shoulder. So if it won't comfortably slide to the floor, or if sliding into the floor adds too much pulling in that sacral area, then put something underneath your elbow. And we're going to be in this position for just a few minutes. See if you can feel that space. You could even take your right hand in, that space right where the sacrum attaches to your hip. Let your head relax. You might make a conscious effort to breathe into your right lung. You can massage the right side of the sacrum. Being still but being present in the sacrum, particularly that right side. If massaging it is feeling good, the other thing you can do is take your right hand right to the top of the hip. You can feel your right hip bone and very gently press that hip bone towards your feet. So like you're lengthening your waist out. You're lengthening your low waist. Just do it just for a moment and then relax. You might also adjust where you feel the sensation in the sacrum by bringing the right leg closer to your left arm or further away. So sliding it toward or away. We'll be here and be still for about 10 more breaths. Just appreciating this space in the sacrum. See if you can still feel that filling on the inhale and the emptying on the exhale. And we'll get ready to come out. Take your time. You can slide, if your right elbow's on the floor, slide that right arm back onto your body first, and then begin to roll onto the left side. Once you're there, you can pick up the right leg. Maybe just stack it on top of the left leg. We're going to do a little bit of rolling here. So legs are stacked. Again, option to keep something between the knees if that feels better for you, if you sleep that way. And then take your right hand to your hip. Just make some easy circles with your right hip. So think it can go away from your waist, it can come towards your waist, it can also go forward, and it can go back. So make that into a circle. Go away, back, towards your armpit, and forward. And just circle it around. Think of taking that sacrum in circles. You can switch the direction of the circles. Easy, soothing movement. And then relax that. So we'll be switching sides. We're going to do that same posture lying on the right side. So I'm going to switch sides, but you can just roll over. Bring any props with you if you are making a big move. So this time from the right side, make sure you have your head supported in any manner that feels comfortable for the neck. And we'll bring the left leg forward of the right leg, so closer to the body. Drop the inner left knee to the ground. And sometimes one side is different than the other, so one side may need that support or the lift and the other doesn't. Just see how it feels first. Are you able to just let the hip or let the inner knee fall and the hip kind of roll forward? And just being in that space for a moment. You can begin to breathe into your left lung and then take your left hand somewhere on that lung, on your rib cage. And next breath in, slowly roll your left shoulder blade and elbow to the floor behind you. And as you breathe out, roll back. So we're creating this spiral pattern again, starting from the sacrum, working through the lower waist, the upper waist, the shoulders, and all the way through the head. Take your time, just building the spiral in the way that feels comfortable for you. Maybe noting that little bit of stretch through the left side of the sacrum this time. You can use your breath in to fill your lung so it feels like instead of forcing yourself into the rotation, that filling lung is just gently rolling you over. It's like the buoyancy of the lung just takes you over. If you find that left knee is lifting up, please feel free to prop it. You'll still get a nice stretch there. It just may be more comfortable for you. And as we work deeper into the rotation, you may find that your left elbow touches the ground, the left shoulder blade gets closer to the ground. Creating the spiral from the sacrum all the way through the base of the skull. Take one or two more, just finding the space where you want to land and be still. And if the knee's lifting, slide something underneath it or just don't roll so far. So you have to balance out the knee being grounded on something, that inner left knee, with the elbow, the left elbow touching the floor. So if that's not happening, you can come back a little bit and put something underneath your left elbow. That's what I'm going to do on this side. This is my tighter side. Or slide something underneath the knee. And finding your point where you can be still. See if you can locate that space right where the left side of the sacrum attaches to your left hip bone. You might even go in there with your hand and give it a gentle massage. Just acknowledge it with your fingers. Easy but full breath in and out of your left lung. Letting yourself rest, letting your awareness rest in whatever sensations are presenting to you, particularly if something is being felt in that sacral area. Feel the weight of the left thigh bone. Breathe in and imagine creating space, and you might even take your left hand to your left hip and gently press it away from the waist, lengthen the waist. And as you breathe out, the left thigh bone is heavy and just falls towards the ground. In any way you want to use your hands as tools. You can also take your right hand to the outer left thigh or hip. Make any noises that sound or feel yummy to you. Creating just a tiny bit of space. Not so much physically, but energetically in that area between the left side of the sacrum and the hip bone. Take about 10 more rounds of breath. When your normal mind wanders off, bring it back into your sensation. And when you're ready to release, you can slide your left hand back onto your body, your arms, so your arms supported by your body. Roll your head back, your shoulders. Come back onto your right side. And then stack your knees again. Lift that left knee up so it's resting on your right knee, perhaps a bolster between the knees. Just let the left hip sit on top of the right hip and then make those circles. So you can come forward with the hip, up with the hip, back and down. And they may start out a little jerky. See if you can smooth them out, circling around. And you can feel your hip with your hand, but imagine moving this gently in a way that it's going all the way into the sacrum. You can feel your sacrum as part of your pelvis, right? It's one of the bones. It's the bone that holds your pelvis together in the back, as well as supporting your spine. And you can go the opposite direction with the circles. Nice, easy, smooth circles. And then relax that again. Using our hands to come up, we're going to be coming to all fours for this next movement and then the still point. So if you find your knees are uncomfortable, you may want to put a blanket on top of your mat for a little extra padding underneath the knees. I'm also going to bring a blanket in that I may end up putting underneath my head. So a blanket or a pillow would work just fine for that purpose. We're going to be coming into what we would call a child's pose, but we're going to do the legs a little bit differently. And before we come into the stillness of the child's pose, the movement is going to be to take the right leg and cross it in front of the left. So my right leg's in front of the left. I can turn this way too. Wherever they want to land. And you're going to exhale and gently press back. And as you press back, you'll see your right knee will lift off the ground. And as you come forward on inhale, your right knee will go back into the ground. So I'm going to turn sideways once again. A little hard to do when my legs are like this. So exhale, press back, let that right knee lift up. And inhale, slowly come forward. Just as far as you can go. So once again, feel that line across your back waist. Just gently going back and forth.
Easy rocking motion. Some people like to make little circles too. If you want to circle your hips as you're going back, you could go to one side and the other. Then I'm going to give you two options on the hold. So we could do the child's pose keeping the legs just as they are, but for many people that's not comfortable, so wait for option 2. If you are doing this and your head's not touching the ground, bring the blanket in. So we could stay like this with the legs crossed. The second option that may be more comfortable for you is uncross the legs, but keep the right knee slightly in front of the left knee. So normally in child's pose, the knees would be even, slightly in front, and then take it back. Take both sides of your waist back. And the same thing, you would let yourself rest in a child's pose. If the head's not comfortably touching the ground, bring a blanket or something in to support you. We'll be here for about a minute or so. So either legs are crossed or just the right knee slightly in front of the left. So by taking that right knee forward, whether crossed or just the knee in front of the left, you might notice how you're getting a little bit bigger stretch through the left lower waist and the left side of the sacrum. And just allowing yourself to go into that area. Nice little stretch for the muscles through the left buttocks. You can breathe in and fill the backside. And as you breathe out, let the weight of the torso just fall into the lower body. Let the weight of the torso release into the legs. Breathing out, soften the belly onto the thighs. And imagine breathing right into that left side of the sacrum once again. Take about 8 to 10 more rounds of breath. Letting the upper body be heavy into the lower body. Your shins are supported by the ground. Feeling the broadness through the whole low back, particularly the left side. And when we're ready to come up, you can take your hands out in front of you. If you're not crossed, you can simply take the legs out. We're going to give it a little stretch after that as well. So we're coming onto all fours, so we're going to do the left hip. So pressing onto all fours in your table pose. First, just take just the left leg back and push through the heel a couple times. You can feel like you're stretching your calf muscle. And then once you've found the length of the leg and the power of the leg, you may want to lift it up and just move it back and forth a little bit. So you can go to the outside and then back to the inside. Notice how this movement can also be felt through the sacrum. Just a little back and forth. If it's slippery, you can even just slide your foot as opposed to lifting it up. And if you want to add more, bend your knee, take that hip in some circles. So after we stretch it, we engage it a little bit, use those muscles to take it around. And let it come down. All right, we're going to do the second side on that. I call it the sacral child's pose. So this time, if you're doing the leg in front, the left leg would come forward of the right. And you're going to do your rocking there, exhaling back, inhaling forward. I can tell I didn't do this side yet. And if that feels like it's a bit much, or if it compromises your knees in any way, try just keeping the legs in line, but taking the left knee slightly in front of the right and push back that way. So you could do it that way, or maybe you're just doing that on the hold. We're going to go here into the cross and rocking back as you exhale and coming forward as you inhale. Empty the belly and let the hips go back. Inhale forward with the heart and the head. You can do the back and forth, or you can make little circles. That feels good. It's always about what your body is willing to experience today. Maybe it's new, but do you still feel safe in your body? Do you feel comfortable? And then on the hold, the knees can stay crossed just as they are, taking the hips back. But if your body's up here somewhere, you want to support it. So bring something in so your head can go down, however you want to crunch up that blanket. If that feels like it's going to be a little bit too much, because that's all of the weight of the torso going into the legs, stretching that area, you can uncross, keep that left knee in front, and come into a child's pose with the left knee slightly in front of the right, taking whatever supports you want for your head, neck, and shoulders. And once again, you might find that one side is okay with the cross-leg position in the hold. The other one wants you to uncross and just take the left knee forward. One of the ways you can know is, are you able to really release the weight of the body? No longer using the muscles to hold you in any particular pattern. You can feel your bones, and your bones are holding you, including the sacral bone. And see if you can sense more of a stretch and a lengthening now through your right waist, your right buttocks, and the right side of the sacrum. Just hanging out with yourself, letting the belly be heavy on the thighs. Maybe you can even feel the movement of the abdomen on your thighs. Just letting the weight of the body drop. Take your last 8 to 10 breaths. And just checking to see there's no place where you're unintentionally creating force, and it might feel like you're either pushing into the ground or you're pulling away from the ground. Trying to protect yourself. Just fall. Slowly working on coming out. Take your hands back down. Coming to all fours. Uncross, of course, if you're crossed. Line up your knees underneath your hips and your wrists underneath your shoulders. Take your right leg back and roll the toes under. Just push through the right leg a few times first. See how that feels. Stretching out the calf, feeling the leg all the way from the pelvis, particularly that right side of the sacrum, to the toes. And then you might start to lift it up and take it out to the right side and across to the left side. Think of your leg like a windshield wiper going back and forth. You can keep the toes on the ground as you do that. Sort of drag the leg. Unless you have shag carpet, then it's going to be a lot more work than lifting it up, probably. And maybe making some circles with that right hip. Just let it play. Don't have to give it a pose name. Just let it roll around. And we'll drop that one down. We have one more set of postures that we're going to do for our sacred sacrum. So this one we're going to be sitting, and you may want to blanket nearby. So I'm going to come into what we call a Z-sit, taking the left leg out to the side so that my inner knee is touching the ground. So that is an internal rotation, that hip. And your right foot, you're going to take the heel to somewhere around the inner left knee or the front of the knee. So for some, this may not be comfortable. And if that's the case, what I'm going to recommend is take a blanket. This one is a little bit thinner. You could even take a thick blanket. And so if you find like this, the left hip is lifting way up off the ground, what can help is to bring in that blanket and put it underneath, I'm going to straighten mine out, it's a bit of a mess, underneath the right hip. So lift up the right hip a little bit. And sometimes that will just give you that squaring of the pelvis that's just going to feel a little more comfortable for you. Okay, so that's an option, bringing that underneath your right hip. Keep a blanket nearby anyhow to the right side of your leg. We take our hands to our hips. And as you breathe out and empty, think of the space from your lower navel center to your throat. And exhale and shorten that space and round your back. Your elbows can even come forward. And what's happening is your pelvis is tilting backwards. Your sacrum is tilting back. As you breathe in, bring the navel center forward, the chest forward, tilt your pelvis forward. You can lift your head. So if you're familiar with yoga, it's like a cat-cow movement. We exhale into the cat, inhale into the cow. But we just have this position of the legs that goes a little bit more into the sacrum. Got the internal rotation of the left leg and the external rotation of the right leg. Just sort of giving the sacrum a little reset. So if it's not comfortable, you've got that blanket underneath your right butt cheek. Give it a little lift. The other thing I find is that you can either be on the big toe side of the left foot. Some people it might be comfortable to be top of the foot down because then there's a little less internal rotation. And just rocking your pelvis so you're letting your whole spine move. See if you can start to move this from your sacrum. So as you breathe out, think of your sacrum falling towards the floor behind you. As you breathe in, bring your sacrum forward, tilt it forward. It's kind of in a scooped shape, so you're scooping it back and forward. And then we're going to land at the center, meaning ears over the shoulders and shoulders over the hips. You're going to take your right hand to the ground. You can keep the left hand right around that upper left hip. And now, as you breathe in, think of lifting the left butt cheek off the ground. So you want to feel, you can even put your hand there, feel those muscles in your outer hip and buttocks engage. Lift it up and internally rotate your thigh, drag your left shoulder towards the right hand. And then as you breathe out, just let that butt cheek sit back down. Inhale and lift it up, rotate the thigh bone inward. And you can let your head follow. Exhale back down. Again, you'll feel like the rotation we did on the ground, your whole spine is rotating, but initiate the movement from the sacrum. Notice what role the leg, the muscles in the leg and the outer hip and buttocks have in lifting and rotating the pelvis. Take your time and explore. Just doing one or two more to find that end range of motion that's comfortable for you. And then we're going to take this into a hold as well. So next time you inhale and lift and rotate, take the left hand to the ground. You can come just down onto your forearms, and if you find that that's low enough for you, then you might want to bring a blanket or something in, a pillow to support your chest and your body so you can stay up a little bit higher, so you're not just resting on your arms. You can let the torso fall. If you don't want that underneath there, I like a little bit of blanket in there. See what you need, and you can even take your arms out in front of you, supporting your head with your arms. So notice, if you can, the way that you've got a nice long line through your left side from the lower waist all the way up under the armpit. create that length through the left side, and we'll spend about 10 more breaths in this position. Just letting your right hip sink down. And then the second position, if you'd like to go there, you can also stay right where we are so our body is more straight off of the pelvis. Second position, take your right hand underneath you, reach out through the right arm, come onto the right shoulder blade, and then take your left arm and reach it overhead. This will really bring you into a deeper, longer side stretch on that left side. Might actually be more comfortable too, so give it a try. Focus on breathing to your left lung. Notice any movement around the low back and the left side of the sacrum. The weight of the legs are heavy. Left hip resting on top of the right hip. And the breath just plays that natural game of expansion and release. All the muscles are relaxed now, and your bones just hold you in this position. Last 5 to 8 breaths. Loving up that long left waist, the space around your sacrum. When you're ready to come up, use your left hand to untuck your right arm. Pause there for a moment, especially if you were in the rotation. Pause on your forearms first. Slowly walk yourself up with both hands. Use your strength of your arms to come back up. And then once you're up, it usually feels pretty good in between to take the legs out in front of you. The legs can be long. Just jelly roll them in and out a little bit. Let your toes roll in and out. They can go the same direction, like windshield wipers, or opposite. And then we're going to do that on the second side. So option to bring something with you. The other thing is, if you found that the bottom hip was like grinding into the ground too much, put padding underneath your hip there anyhow. So this is my tighter side going this way. You're going to come into that internal rotation with the right leg. So big toe side down or flat foot. Left leg heel is somewhere around your right knee. So you're making this Z shape. If the right hip is lifting way up or it's just not comfortable, take a blanket, a pillow, something, put it underneath your left butt cheek. Just give your butt cheek a little lift. And that may feel better for you. So you want to be able to stack your ears, your shoulders, and your hips and let the weight of the lower body just fall into the ground. We want to land and locate in our sits bones and in our legs. If you're doing that, then we know we're at a good starting point. Then we can begin the movement. So hands to about your hip area, like you're framing out your pelvis. And sometimes it's easier to create the movement first from the whole spine. So breathe out, bring your shoulders forward, your pelvis back, shorten the space from the lower abdomen to the collarbones. Breathe in, bring your belly forward, your heart forward, your elbows back. Just think of the cat-cow movement that we do, exhaling and rounding into the cat. Inhaling into the cow, arching the back. Notice where your spine is moving fluidly. Also notice where you feel stuck. Is the neck moving fluidly? But then what happens if you try to move from your sacrum? Let the sacrum fall back, let the pelvis tilt back, and then let it tilt forward. So just playing with your range of motion
and how we're initiating that movement. Is it coming from the head? Is it coming from the tail end? One or two more. And then let's land. So land in that upright position. Stack your ears, your shoulders, and your hips, your diaphragm in the middle of your pelvis and your shoulders. And now we'll take the left hand to the ground. Keep your right hand somewhere around your waist, because then you can actually feel these muscles as they contract and engage and release, all these muscles in your outer right hip. So now as you breathe in, you're going to lift the right butt cheek off the ground. Feel that contraction and roll the thigh bone in. Bring your right shoulder towards the left hand. And exhale, just sit back down. Inhale and rotate the spine and reach through that right side. Exhale, release, sitting back down. We also notice where our movements feel jerky and try to smooth it out. And something I noticed that I've seen in other students as well is, so with this thigh, I have less internal rotation, so it is more comfortable for me to stay on the top of the foot versus the big toe side. But you can play with that. Let your breath guide you. Imagine breathing all the way to the tailbones below the sacrum, from the tailbone to the base of the neck, and reaching and lengthening as you're spiraling, and then breathing out and just landing. Last one. And then we'll take this one into our hold. So once you're in the rotation, take the right arm down to the ground. You can start with both hands on the ground, maybe coming just to forearms. Forearms is a nice starting point. If you're going to stay on your forearms, then you might want to bring something in underneath you to support your chest and your head. So stuff a blanket, a pillow, whatever you got there. Otherwise, you can also come a little bit further down, maybe even extending the arms out in front of you. We'll stay in the rotation first with the belly down. Just letting that left hip receive the earth. Making any little adjustments that feel right for you. My joke is always that there's a half an inch, sometimes it's a quarter of an inch, between heaven and hell in any yoga pose, particularly when we're holding it. So if you gotta squirm a little bit, because ultimately that's going to make you more comfortable, go ahead and do it. And then if you want to go into the second version of this hold, take your left arm and thread it through so you're on the left, not so much the outer shoulder, but the shoulder blade. And take your right hand and kind of spider crawl your fingers all the way overhead. So if I come from up here, it's a different stretch than if I take my arm forward and come up. So I think of making a sweeping half circle motion, and I get a little more stretch from my rib cage and my sacrum versus just reaching overhead. So make that circle. Invite yourself to breathe into the right lung now. Acknowledge the weightedness of left hip on the ground. Just let it fall into the earth. And feel that spaciousness, that lightness, the lifting of the right hip, right side of the sacrum.
Taking your last few rounds of breath. Where do you feel joy in your body? Are there any places of discomfort? Where are the places where you don't feel anything at all? And part of the embodiment practice is owning all of those. The pleasure, the displeasure, the lack of sensation. And then use your right hand, press into your right hand to unthread the left arm if it's there. Slowly working your way up. Never any hurry. Once you're there, one more time, take the legs out in front of you. We're going to finish with just a little bit of movement. See, I like to take the muscles and be more active after the relaxation. So I'm going to get my legs on the slippery surface. You can do the same. Take your legs out wide and point your toes upward. You can support your body with your hands behind you. As you breathe out, dip the big toe side of the legs down into the floor. So that's internal rotation of the thighs. It's actually internal rotation creates more space around the sacrum, between the sacrum and the hip bones. So you're going to internally rotate the thighs and drag them towards each other. And then as you breathe in, think pinky toe side of the feet down towards the ground. Externally rotate the thighs and drag them away. So what often happens is we try to bend our knees. If you can, keep your knees straight. So think of it like a kink in a hose. As soon as we bend our knees, we kink that hose, and we're no longer using our hips the same. So you want to move from your sacrum, keep the legs straight, and just slide them in and out a few times. Might feel some of those muscles we were just working with in and around the sacrum, the outer hips. Take your legs swimming. And it's always a good little assessment too, you can notice. So as you're coming in, does one leg rotate inward a lot more than the other? I have that, absolutely. That doesn't mean it's going to cause discomfort. Same thing, out external rotation. Does one leg rotate out more than the other? You're just noticing what muscles are activating. Last one. And then draw the legs in. We'll come in for a short relaxation on our backs. Once you're back onto your back, bend your knees and hug your knees into your chest and just roll the sacrum, so you can even hold your hands on your kneecaps or the backs of the thighs. Let your head and your shoulders relax. Think of massaging your sacrum in the ground. Really easy. You can roll all the way onto the right hip, the top of the sacrum or the waist, the upper waist, the left hip, and then all the way down towards the tailbone. Choosing one direction, just going really slow. Let your sacral bone feel the floor. The bones, we say, hold the element of the earth. They're strong and sturdy. Then you can switch the direction of the circles if you'd like. If it feels like it's too much, you can let your legs land for a moment and then try it again. But just rotating that sacred bone into the ground very gently. Letting the element of earth fill that bone with stability. And then we'll let the legs come back down. If you like to do your relaxation with your legs extended, you're welcome to do that. But I'd recommend putting a blanket or a bolster or something underneath your knees so that your low back and your sacrum are relaxed. The other option is to do what we did in the beginning of the practice, which is to bend your knees, take your heels slightly wider than your hips, and let the inner knees fall together. Just let them fall. So however wide you have to have your feet so the inner knees can comfortably touch. We're going to take what we call Trimurti Mudra. So you take the tips of the index fingers together, the inner index fingers and the tips of the thumbs. So I'm making a triangle shape. And I'm going to place my hands right on the low abdomen. You may even place your thumbs so they're resting in your navel center. Creating the shape of the sacrum with the hands, sacrum and the backside, and your lovely hands resting on your abdomen. Think of this shape as a window for the mind's eye to stay present in. And not just the front where you feel the hands, but it's as if you're looking through a telescope. And as you look through that triangle shape of your hands, you can see all the way through to the back of your sacrum. And also let it be a doorway for your breath. Feel your breath easily fill the abdomen and the space of your hands. But continue on to touch the back of the sacrum. All of the organs protected by the sacrum. And breathing out, we just release and purge. Begin to breathe a little bit deeper and fuller. You can hold that Trimurti Mudra, that window into your sacred sacrum. And the triangle, the downward triangle, is the feminine energy, the divine feminine. And we recognize this as the space in our body, our womb. I like to refer to it as the womb heart. And the sacrum that protects and holds it all together. And wherever you may be and whatever you've been given in this lifetime, let's take a moment before we leave to think about how you honor your divine feminine, your sacred feminine, the lunar side, a space of rest, a renegotiation for your body, often in places of darkness. And take those deeper breaths again, and when you're ready, you can remove your hands. Wiggle your toes, take a full body stretch if that feels good. So we're working further and further, at least in my hemisphere, towards those shorter days of the year, into the more yin, quiet, feminine time of year. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you enjoy this practice for your sacred sacrum. Please remember to subscribe, and thank you, patrons, for all of your lovely support that keeps this channel going. Peace, joy, love, and light.